Okay, it's 3:00. It's 3:00 and we have a busy agenda, so we will just proceed and Lee will come when he comes. I haven't heard from him. Has anybody there heard that he's not planning to attend?
I haven't heard anything yet, Deborah.
Okay, well, we'll just assume he's running a bit late. I know he's got a business to run. I'm happy to see Rick Snyder here. I hope all is well with his wife and his home. So welcome back, Rick.
She's good. Better.
Good. Glad to hear it.
I've got somebody watching over her for the next week at home, so we're good.
Oh, that's good to hear. We'll keep wishing you the best.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So we have minutes to approve from March 10th. Would anybody like to move those? Rich moves them. Greg seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. Mike Lane?
Oh, we're voting, yes.
Rich John?
Yes.
Greg Mezey?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So that passes. Changes to the agenda. We have some additions to the agenda. We have the appropriation to award a contract to manage our community recovery grant program, which we'll cover in Lisa's presentations from the administration department. I've also got two resolutions that I received. One for an appropriation from emergency disaster assistance funds, and one an appropriation from the contingent fund for terminal pay. I assume these are the resolutions that somebody in finance contacted me about adding last.
Brenda from the health department asked last week about adding them.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So these are hers. And we've got Frank here to address these, I assume. Is that correct?
Yes.
In that case, if you all don't mind, I'm going to those on the agenda up front, perhaps now, if it's okay, so that Frank can address these and be on his way, because this is not a meeting that he usually attends. So if that's all right with everybody, I think we'll just go directly to those two new resolutions. First of all, we've got appropriation from emergency disaster assistance funds for community surveillance testing for Tompkins County residents related to COVID-19, ID number 10858. Would somebody move that, please? Rich moves. Greg seconds. Frank, would you like to address this?
Sure. I'm sorry. Was that the contingent fund for?
No, this is from emergency disaster assistance funds.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah.
The community surveillance testing.
Yeah, so it's really moving the monies on the books for the testing that's been done. I believe what's happening is the revenues that we've received in from FEMA are being shifted into the health department budget in order to even things out with the expenses that we've been making.
Okay, so this is the reimbursement that we finally got?
I believe so. I think it's the total of the reimbursements that we've received to date, and it's being shifted in the budget.
Okay, that makes sense. Anybody else have anything they want to say about this? Rich?
Yeah, just, is this the total amount we spent in 2021, or is this the, just the reimbursement?
Not even close.
What's the
No.
amount we spent on testing? 'Cause that's a
Amy,
lot
you want to
of money.
answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're around $6 million at this point. And it's being reimbursed. That includes the setup and then the ongoing expenses. So it's just under 6 million last I looked. And we're getting billed monthly increments now. It's streaming in a little bit slower, but there's still people getting tested.
And what is the extent of the reimbursement? Do we have a share?
That's what's being brought in. So we're getting reimbursed at 100% of those costs, and we've received just over half of that, or around half of that at this point.
So we're spending national money, not our own.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
eventually.
Yeah, eventually, yes.
Yeah, for the time, we spend the money and then the check is in the mail. But, you know, we'll take it. Any other questions? We ready to vote? Mike,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that passes. All right, the next one, Frank, is the one appropriating from the contingent fund for terminal pay. That's ID number 10861. Could I get a motion on that, please? Rich moves, Greg seconds. Take it away, Frank.
Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. It's just covering the costs of having a couple of staff that had left in their payouts.
Okay, any questions for Frank on that? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Mike,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that passes as well. Thank you, Frank, for coming and answering our questions. And you're certainly welcome to stay if you'd like, but I bet that you want to go back to doing something else. So have a wonderful afternoon.
Yeah, thank you for doing those on short notice. We appreciate it.
Not a problem. All right. Okay, we're having trouble. What? Sorry, my computer was doing something very weird. All right, then, we're back on our regular agenda. Do we have any public comments?
No, I haven't received anything, Deborah.
Okay, thank you. I guess we can then move on to Lisa Holmes and the County Administrator Report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a few items to update the committee on. I believe you received the NISAC's budget, preliminary state budget analysis over the weekend. Some good items in regard to the county's outlook in terms of the state diversion of the aid to municipalities and distress hospital fund is ending for counties around the sales tax. So that means that the portion of the sales tax that has been diverted annually for the county will no longer be diverted, which amounts to about $600,000 annually. There's some increases in aid to our departments, the details of which will be sorting through as the days progress, but looks like some good increases for health, human services, veterans affairs, et cetera. And for the overall operations of the legislature, the changes to open meetings to enable hybrid options in the future, and keeping that as a local option by local law or resolution is something that is was in the budget itself as well. So on the whole, that looks to be fairly good for counties, and more details to be sorted out in the days ahead. There were some things that we were hoping for that weren't included, but in terms of assigned counsel and the increase in reimbursement rates there. But on the whole, it looks pretty good. I can segue then into our department, the administration department. We're moving ahead in terms of our forecasting and preparation for the budget retreat coming up on April 26th. And there are many different moving parts that we're considering right now. I think it'd be premature to say that we've landed anywhere, but it's I think the combination of things is going to make for a somewhat challenging budget year ahead. Again, more to come in a few short weeks on that, but we're working diligently on that. And then I think we have at least 2 resolutions on the agenda for consideration and further discussion. The fiscal policy, and then the addition of the award of the contract for the recovery grant program, as well as Juneteenth.
Okay, do you want to do that now or just do it with your other resolutions?
Up to you. I'm fine doing it either way.
Let's do it with the other budget resolutions, please.
Okay, sure.
Deborah, I did have a question about the report from Albany. And I'm not
Okay.
going through the larger document, Lisa, but I'm curious. The governor had made a strong point of trying to replace JCO, the Judicial Commission on Public Ethics. And I think neither the Senate or Assembly took it up. Is that the case?
I believe that's the case. I don't quote me though. I think that's what I heard, but I don't remember it in here.
Okay. Okay.
I believe that that's accurate.
Lisa, was there information on the reimbursement for community college FTEs?
I'll have to look into that piece as well.
Okay.
Let's see. Well, while you're looking for that, Lisa, I'm looking at the document where it discusses JCOP. And it says that the enacted budget includes a provision to reform the current JCOP. Following changes were made to JCOP structure and function. Is that what you're interested in, Rich?
Yeah. Does it, so it sounds like something was done?
Well, it says 11 commissioner member selection, 3 members nominated by the governor, 2 by the Senate Majority Leader, 2 by the Assembly Speaker, 1 by the Assembly Minority Leader, 1 by the Senate Minority Leader, 1 by the Attorney General, and 1 by the Comptroller. Nomination approval. All commission nominees will have to be approved by a review committee consisting of New York Law School deans. If this committee rejects the nominee, the appointing body would need to nominate a new individual. Chair. Commissioners will, by majority vote, determine the panel's chair, who can be removed by majority vote of the other commissioners for substantial neglect of duty, misconduct, or a violation of confidentiality. Executive director, it will take a majority vote of the commission to approve the JCOP executive director, and the executive director will have the power to hire staff. Investigation approval, determinations on about whether to proceed with an ethics-related investigation are made by commission majority vote. That's everything that's in here.
Okay, so it does sound like some action was taken. And
Some action was taken, but you probably understand far better than anyone else on this committee what the implications of those actions are.
I think the governor was saying take the nominations away from the affected legislator and governor and give it to law school deans, but it sounds like they have some approval step in there for law school deans.
Yeah, it's like the law school deems, it sounds like they have kind of a veto authority. If they don't approve, then the approving body would have to approve someone else.
Yeah, and it's good if they did it now because Hasty was saying he didn't want to do policy in the budget, but if you don't do it in the budget, you don't fund it. So maybe this is progress. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah,
And then Mike, I'm sorry, did you have the answer to Mike's question, Lisa?
It's all right if she doesn't have it today.
Well,
Well,
it's,
I've got the document here if you,
what I find is that the enacted budget maintains a funding floor for community colleges at 100% of prior year funding, up from the 98% floor enacted in federal year 2022. Without that funding floor, community colleges would have faced an $81 million loss in Formula A due to enrollment declines.
Which would have been about 13%.
But it's prior year, it's not going back to 19, which is what I think
No.
the colleges really wanted.
No. I got a piece of what they wanted, but not everything, unfortunately.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. All right, so Lisa, let's follow the agenda. We'll have a finance report, a WDIC report, an HR report, and then we'll get to your resolutions. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay. Rick Snyder.
Hi, I have two quick things to share with you. One which I'll bring to the legislature when it meets next time, and that's on room tax. We just got reports this morning from Lisa Schott and Nick over at planning, and I'm going to share my screen right now to give you a little preliminary on what we'll be sharing with the legislature. We show our fourth quarter room tax here coming in at $383,989 in this right-hand column for our first quarter. I should note that this is the best quarter that we've had thus far for the county. It goes back to 2019 when we had our best year before this, which was about $325,000. So we're up to 384 compared to 325, which is our previous best year. 2020 and 2021, of course, were poor years because of the lockdown and the COVID, and we managed to come out on the other side of that. So it looks like we're pretty much back to normal and ahead of the game for room tax. And I'll be bringing you a more detailed report on how it breaks down into hotels and bed and breakfasts at the legislature meeting when we meet again. Any questions on this?
Thank you, Rick. That's great news.
That is. The other thing is this contingency report. You'll note that we started the year at $1.9 million, and we added another appropriation here of $1.6 million near the end of last fiscal year to get us through the year. So far, we've spent out of that $3.5 million, we spent $2.5. So we still have $990,000 left. There may still be a few more budget adjustments as I close the books for this year. I think the major ones have been made, but this even includes a couple that, or at least one that hasn't even come to the legislature yet. So I thought that painted a pretty good picture that we did appropriate additional dollars for the contingency fund of $1.6 million. But we've got nearly $1 million of that left. So I think we'll end the year probably around $750,000 remaining in the contingent fund.
That's also great news. Thank you, Rick. Does anyone have any questions for Rick? I see Rich and Mike.
Rick, remind me, what did we budget for 2022 for contingent fund?
I'm not sure, Lisa, do you remember?
I believe it's $900,000.
Yeah, let me look it up here real quick. It's
But we had 1.9 for 21 just because we thought
We had
so much was unsettled.
We had 900,000 in 2020.
yeah, 900,000. We have $900,000 of which we used 230,000 so far, which leaves $668,000 left for 2022.
We had to add more
Right.
mainstream
Did we add twice or once?
ones.
Yeah.
And so
We've added both last year and I think the year before, didn't we?
We did in 20 and 21. I think we added 1.2 million back in 20 and 1.6 or 1.5, what was that? Yeah, 1.6
1.6, yeah.
this past year. So I'm always very cautious. I try to get the legislature approve that in the fall or in the early winter, so that when we get to year end, that we don't run out of money. And I'd rather have money left over at the end of the year than run out.
Yeah, if you're going to have a surprise, it might as well be a pleasant one.
That's right.
Do you think we have enough in contingency this year? Are we through the unexpected? I guess you never know, but
Kind of the definition.
but it seemed COVID related. Do we think we're at a point where we've stabilized from that?
I don't.
I guess
Hard for me to tell.
We may.
Okay.
I mean, we're doing a lot of budget adjustments right now that aren't hitting the contingency. They're going right from fund balance, like all these union settlement agreements for wages. You haven't seen that come through yet for the white collar and blue collar wages. We did do one for the that extra vacation payout. A lot of these are coming directly right out of unappropriated fund balance instead of contingency fund. So when we have very large things like that that need special approval, like wage increases and vacation payouts and things like that, they don't always come from the contingency fund. We make a recommendation that it comes right out of general fund balance.
Did we have reserves set up?
Yes.
Yeah.
So were they dedicated fund balance?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Mike, I asked more than one question.
Well, I mean, I think the point is that it's hard to tell if we're going to need to add more to the contingent fund until towards the end of the year, which is why that's generally. So Mike, and then I have a question from Annie.
Rick, I just wanted I think I understand the 900,000 left over in the contingent fund. That goes back to the general fund. It doesn't roll over into the 2022 contingent account, does it?
True, it just goes back in the general fund balance. You're correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Annie.
Thank you, Deborah. Rick, thanks for that report. Sounds like we have some good news. Just wondering for the room tax, is that money's actually received or is that owed us?
Oh, that's money actually received in the coffers.
Great. And do you know how much are we behind on getting receivables in as we have been in the past?
I don't have the notes yet that go with the report. This just came in, moments before the meeting from Nick and Lisa, and we have some other reports to get from them. That's why I said I'd bring a more thorough report at the legislature meeting.
Okay. Yeah. And with that, I was just wondering if some of this was like, back, like, because if we're owed, like back years, a year or two for some of these places, are some of them just catching up, or is this actually something I'm excited about?
Some of them have caught up. The one biggest one that was behind for 21 and 20 paid one whole year, but not the other year. So I said, we're going to take the check. And meanwhile, Lisa's been working with our deputy county attorney, and they've come up with penalties and interest that are owed on the remaining balance. And they're working with the client, or they're working with the taxpayer to come up with a way to get that paid off. But so even our very worst offender has made efforts at this point to pay at least somewhere between a third and a half of his outstanding bill.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Greg.
Yeah, Rick, just to clarify, that report that you showed us at 383,989, those are the funds that are collected in the quarter or for that quarter. The additional revenue in that table is funds that are collected outside that quarter.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think to Ann's original question, that 383 is not encompassing of back payments. That's a good quarter. And then 34,000 was collected of funds that were not supposed to be inside.
From a previous quarter,
From a
yes.
previous quarter. Okay, so yeah, so it was a good quarter.
Our best quarter.
Or
yeah.
in quilters lingo, a fat quarter. Anyhow. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.
That
Thank
was
you.
a very heartening report. All right. So now, Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee update. Henry.
Yes, we voted on the Juneteenth as a holiday resolution, which will be before this committee later on. We also discussed the budget and activities for the next year. Like we put up money for Juneteenth. We also put up money for Team Jedi's rollout of their values, and so we connected that. And then we had a discussion about diversity training for legislators and department heads. We really feel strongly that that we need to do something about that, and that it should not come out of the travel funds for legislators that's already been used, because this is something different, which I'm going to discuss with leadership soon. And that's about it.
Okay. Any questions for Henry? I don't see anything, Henry. Thank you so much. And thank you for this Juneteenth resolution.
Okay.
We'll get to that as soon as we hear from Ruby.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Just a brief update today. Update on the first thing is the compensation study. I've checked the references of the recommended vendor. We still have a few things to iron out. If you recall, this was to conduct a market analysis of salaries across the 4 unions, management and confidential employees. The vendor that we're recommending has done surrounding areas, so we feel like that will aid in our compensation study because you won't have to do so much research, so the timing will be shorter. We still have a few things to iron out. Now we'll be bringing a resolution to the May 9th meeting where we will identify funding, and it's under 30,000. So the process is we can do the contract from HR with information provided to the program committee. So that's what we're going to do. Unless there are other questions about that, I'll move on to my other 2 announcements. Okay. And these are brief.
Like it. Go ahead, Ruby.
Okay, brief announcements. Remember the 25-year dinner club, the 25-year club dinner is June 16th. The RSVP date is June 1st. Legislators are invited. You may come and bring a guest. So, but we'd like to have the RSVP so we can know how many to plan for. We'll be at the Lake Watch Inn, which is a very nice inn, a very beautiful view. So we're looking forward to having you all join us. And also the employee picnic is on August the 31st. And as always, you're welcome to attend. And that's all I have.
Ruby? And I would encourage everyone to attend that 25-year dinner. It was lovely last year. It was at Lake Watch as well. Okay. And
Just an aside, since the contingency fund may have extra money, does that mean I can come back before the committee at the end of the year and ask for more staff? Just asking.
Okay.
Could I get the date of the picnic again?
August 31st.
Okay, thank you, Ruby. All right, Lisa, you've got a bunch of resolutions for us, and I'm going to suggest that we save the resolution to update the administrative policy till last and do the Juneteenth and the sales tax distribution and the recovery grant award first, because I suspect we're going to have some more or less lengthy discussion on the fiscal policy.
Okay,
Greg, did you have a question?
Yeah, the recovery fund award, was that in a separate email? Did I?
Yes, I think that came this morning.
No, that one came out Friday.
Okay,
Okay, all right, I'll pull that up. Thank you. Sorry about that.
okay. All right, so let's do Juneteenth. Let's see. Okay, resolution adoption of Juneteenth as a paid employee holiday, ID 10832. Can I get a motion on that, please? Mike moves, Rich seconds. I don't know, who's going to speak to this, Lisa or Henry?
it's coming through through WDIC. So Henry, would you like to speak to it?
Sure, I'd like to speak to it. This resolution is really to honor the African-American soldiers who fought in the Civil War from the Tompkins County, and really to acknowledge Juneteenth as a national holiday. Joe Biden has already signed a resolution to acknowledge it. New York State has acknowledged it as a national holiday. Cornell and Ithaca College and TC3 have also taken the day off. And so we feel that it's our turn to really to acknowledge it and to get our employees all the day off, to really solidify the honoring of in a celebration of Juneteenth. We had a big celebration last year, but we really thought that this year we really ought to give everyone the day off for Juneteenth. And I'll take any other questions.
Rich?
The resolution indicates June 19th is the day that we would use to commemorate Juneteenth. Is that correct?
Yes.
On the calendar, it looks like that's a Sunday this year.
Yes, and on those days we would do it on either I guess the Monday,
Monday.
or on a Monday. Yeah.
Do we want to
because
say that in the resolution? Because it looks like we're doing a Sunday for this year.
I think there's a policy that already addresses that. Isn't there a policy that already addresses when holidays are in terms of when they fall on Sunday or fall on Saturdays, Lisa?
It's through each of the bargaining units. And so some of the bargaining units observe the holidays on the actual holiday and some on the observed. So we would, when we enact this, we would have MOAs with each of the bargaining units and they would follow those holiday
So
schedules.
some would get Sunday and some would get Monday.
Correct. So for instance, our 24/7 operations often take the holidays or observe the holidays on the actual day as opposed to the Monday.
So
we
it
don't-
might be different depending on which bargaining unit you're in.
Right.
Everybody will get a holiday.
We're just not sure which day it'll be for some employees. It'll
Right.
vary. Okay.
Okay, anything else? Mike?
I'm still confused on this point, and Rich, thanks for raising it. I was going to suggest we add to this that we would observe it on the same day as it is observed by New York State. And I just wondered, I'm trying to think of the other holidays. Do we don't change the date of Christmas because with a bargaining unit MOU, I don't think. That I understand that some people have to work on that date and may have a holiday coming to them otherwise, but I just wondered what we should be doing. Henry, what's your thought?
Well, my thought is that we have July 4th. And I assume that switches too, and that's on a Sunday or Saturday. That also switches to a Friday or a Saturday or a Friday or Monday, or people who have worked 24/7 also take off that day. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes. So for right now, for instance, if Christmas falls on a Sunday, some of our bargaining units would have the Monday following Christmas off. And others would get it on the day of the actual day. So
Okay.
I would caution against treating this any differently than we treat any of our other holidays under the MOUs. I think that would just create confusion.
Yep.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Mike,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So congratulations, Henry and WDIC. You have created a holiday.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's move to the resolution adjustment to the 2022 budget, city county sales tax distribution agreement, ID 10808. Can I get a motion on that, please? Rich moves, Mike seconds. So this, I'm a little confused. Somebody want to explain this to me? Is this just because there was more sales tax? We're giving the city more than we expected? I'm not sure I understand this exactly.
yes, my understanding, we have an agreement with the city based on a formula, and depending upon the sales tax receipts, that the amount that they receive goes up or down based on the sales tax revenues.
So we haven't changed the formula. It's just
No.
there was more revenue, so we have to give them more than we budgeted for. Rich.
I can add to that. The Ithaca County sales agreement dates way back into the 90s. We haven't ever addressed that or changed it. And it affects a portion of that 1%. You know, the local portion here is 4%, but there's the original 3% that's split between the towns and villages and the city and the county. And then there's that additional 1%. And of that additional 1%, there's a portion, the county portion, that we've agreed to pay to the city of Ithaca based on all the things that are in that agreement. And what you alluded to as the formula or metric for which we gauge how much the city actually gets from us, it's based on the previous year's actuals. So in a really bad year, like the year before last, you know, they wouldn't feel the repercussions of that until the next fiscal year. And the reason why we are increasing the budget this year is because last year's sales tax, the actuals were much higher than what were budgeted. And so the city of Ithaca payments that we give to them because of this sales tax agreement, it lags by one whole year. It's based on the activity of the previous fiscal year.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions?
Every year.
Yeah. Oh, we don't have more.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Mike,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Thank you, Rick. And now let's do resolution ID 10850, appropriation from contingent fund and award of contract, Tompkins County Recovery Grant Program. Can I get a motion on this, please? Greg moves it. I will second it. And Lisa, do you want to speak to this, please?
Sure. So as you are aware, we issued a request for proposals from firms to provide management services for to execute the recovery grant program. We reviewed the respondents. We had a couple of sessions where we needed to provide more clarification. And the end result was that we had three qualified firms who submitted final proposals after a series of review and interviews and meetings with those firms. We recommend the MRB Group as the firm that has the best qualifications, or the seemed to all of us unanimously the most suited to assist the county to administer the recovery grant program. They work exclusively with municipal governments, and they have a lot of expertise in the grant management area, and we felt that they could very much assist us in executing this program as expediently and successfully as possible.
Thank you, Lisa. I have one question. The $125,000 seems really low in the spectrum of quotes that we got. And I just wondered, is that going to be enough?
This was the trickiest part of this resolution, because they, in terms of their quote for services for us, did it on a scale based on the assistance that they would be providing per application. And this was an estimate based on that. Amy, I see Amy popped on. If you wanted to speak more to that, that estimate.
Sure. Yeah. So I think you've covered it, Lisa. This is based on how many engagements. So they have a per engagement kind of part of their proposal. And this would be 30 engagements. Obviously, they could have more or less. That's times that they're assisting applicants with filling out the applications or other things. So we went with the estimate of 30. So we may have to come back if that goes above that. But at this point, it seemed like that was a good estimation. And the way the resolution reads is up to that amount. So if it goes under, then we would negotiate that contract for less than the 125,000.
Okay. I mean, what does everybody think? Does 30 engagement sound like enough?
It's like the contingent fund.
This isn't Washington, Deborah.
Say what?
This isn't Washington.
Oh, everything's Washington, Mike. Well, I mean, okay, if you guys are comfortable with that, I think that there ought to be a caveat on this, that all of our legislative colleagues are aware of, that, this might not be enough. On the other hand, this is considerably less than the high roller bid we got. So I'm very happy with that. Anybody else have any comments or questions? Rich?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with this and understanding that we may need to replenish. But I did have a conversation with Bill Troy that I wanted to just bring to the attention of the committee. And he thought we might benefit from getting an advisory opinion from the comptroller on what our program is. I don't know if you've spoken with him about this, Deborah, but looking generally at our process for grant approval and supervision, and also our definition of public use, so that we are not running afoul of this, since this is a first time we are doing this. Lisa, you're nodding. We're going to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes, I've had similar conversations with Bill.
Okay.
How long will that delay things?
I would think we should have done it last month, but probably a good idea nonetheless.
Mike,
Yeah, I hope we don't delay the grant program waiting for the comptroller's response.
well, I will say that if we screw this up and distribute money that we're not supposed to distribute, then every single one of us on the legislature is personally liable potentially for that improper distribution.
I
So
brought my wallet.
say what?
I brought my wallet.
Mike's
Well, good for you, but I'm not willing to fork it over out of my money.
So if it
I
takes
just-
6 months, it's all right with you before we get this thing going?
I don't think it'll take 6 months. I mean, what's all with me is that I will be a pest in Tom DiNapoli's ear if it's taking too long. Greg?
And I would be upset if it was 6 months delay, Mike, but I think we can make that decision. I think if we ask the question and then they don't give us a ready answer, we have some protection in trying to move forward. You know,
Why?
I think.
Why would we have any protection at all? We don't have, we
What I
don't
was
wait.
going to say was that the real critical point is the disbursement of funds. That we could start with the application process and vetting them. And as long as we're not writing checks before we get our advisory opinion.
And I think that there are certain categories of grant distributions, Rich, that are probably safe harbors. You know, I don't think that there's serious questions about giving money to a not-for-profit. I think the real issues arise when we start crossing that line into giving it to individual businesses, for example. That may be problematic. And before we distribute a penny to any organization like that, I would want the comptroller to tell us that that's okay.
Yeah, certainly there were some things within ARPA that were quite different in terms of what we would be allowed to do that we have foregone with taking
Right.
money in-house. So, yeah.
I would also just add, in part, the selection of this vendor was because they exhibited some expertise in this area as well. And I've offered after today to put them in touch with Bill Troy to see about further conversations there and or if they could provide an easier pathway to the comptroller's office to get the questions answered.
Right.
But certainly we can start, you know, getting the guidelines out to the community and soliciting proposals without waiting on the comptroller's office. So good point, whoever made that one. Okay, are we ready to vote? Mike,
Yes,
Rich,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And oh my God, we're actually doing this. At long last.
We'll see.
well, I don't know.
Okay.
I think you just threw a monkey wrench in it.
We might have.
You know, Mike, you're a lawyer. You know,
I also know that the county indemnifies us if we make a mistake in good faith.
well, I'd rather be safe than sorry. All right. So,
Yes, I'm a lawyer and I know sometimes you take risks.
okay, we have a resolution to update the administrative policy 05-02 fiscal policy ID 10833. Can I get a motion on this one, please? Rich John moves. I will second. Okay, Lisa, take it away.
Okay, so this is, I think, this marks our third conversation this year about the fiscal policy. And after a couple of conversations with department heads on this as well, I distributed the marked up policy to department heads and deputies and the legislature for their review. Really, the the major changes within the policy were limited to the reference to rollover. There are other parts of the fiscal policy in general that could use updating, but given the timeline that we're on, if we want to implement this to take effect and give the organization sufficient warning, or that we all have the same, we're all playing under the same rules for the 2023 budget process, it would need to, timing would need to be for this meeting to change the rollover policy. So, the sum and substance of most of those changes are just the elimination of that wording in the about rollover in the policy. What I did send to departments in more or less a cover letter in an email, and I shared it with you all as well. In addition to this, we foresee for the 2023 budget process handling the purchase of computer equipment through the ITS capital program. So taking those lines out of for departmental expenditure in the operating budget, and putting that into the capital budget. And that may also help to improve our efficiency and get better costs for centralizing the computer procurement. That's one area where departments typically use rollover, is to replace computer equipment. The second is the purchase of vehicles. And we've effectively centralized the procurement of vehicles through the Green Fleet policy. And we have a fleet manager, Terry Carroll, who is in charge of that. And that is also helping to create greater efficiencies there, perhaps realize some cost savings with, bulk purchasing. And that's another area where rollover is typically used. So both of those changes have been met with optimism by department heads. I also plan to, if possible, increase the contingency fund in the 2023 budget, anticipating that there might be some needs among departments as we go through this change. And then it won't be exactly this way every year, but as this would be a transitional year, the finance department also anticipates that there will be some additional funding rebates earned over the past 3 years from P-card transactions that they will be able to supply to departments for that, which would be an additional unplanned source of revenue for use in the 2022 budget. So, so we've communicated all of those things with departments.
I'm sorry, 22 budget or 23?
22, the current
So
year's
this
budget.
year, okay.
So, so with all of those caveats, I'm put this out for further discussion or questions from legislators.
I have one initial question, Lisa. So the computer equipment, there's a capital program, there's money allocated to that. So if a department needed computers, that would access that money through that fund. When you talk about centralized procurement under the Green Fleet policy, is there a fund for that?
Yeah, so there is a capital project called Green Fleet as well. And that's in the capital program. So there's the green building and the Green Fleet. And so last year for the 2022 budget, many departments procured their vehicles with some funding through the Green Fleet capital program. And this would continue.
So now they would get off. So if my department needed a vehicle, it wouldn't come out of my budget, it would come out of the Green Fleet budget.
Mostly, yes. There are some departments, say DSS or health department, that could potentially receive some state reimbursement for vehicles. So we would want to continue to maximize those state reimbursements. So we would, in those cases, we would combine sources.
But the point is, it's not going to ding the department's budget.
That's correct. And I think that doing it this way for both computers and vehicles, we know that we've not kept pace with computer replacement as we should, that people let it go for longer than they should and then run into problems. Same thing with vehicles. And I think that this will help us in terms of regular replacement and may help us with resale as well in terms of the vehicles.
Okay, I'm sure someone somewhere has a question. Rich.
Yeah, when we were talking about this issue earlier, the concern is getting to the end of the year and having a department head spend down their budget. And just because they don't want to appear to have no need for the money. And rollover was a way to address that. Outside of cars and computers, you said there's going to be some mechanism in the contingency fund to try to address that, or no?
Not for departments that have additional unspent funds or just unspent funds at the end of the year. I think what we've seen and what I learned from our meetings with department heads leading up to this, where we were discussing it, when the changes that were enacted to the rollover policy several years ago, where when salary lines became ineligible to be used for rollover, that was the very significant change to the rollover policy that really brought those funds back to the general fund. Now, in terms of the remaining funds that are available and eligible for rollover, they've dwindled. And these two categories are the main categories, the bulk of them. So I really don't see hoarding, or I don't see that behavior as being a problem in terms of trying to spend at the end of the year needlessly. And I really hope as we move into in the coming few years with a budget management software, that the departments will be more actively engaged in the day-to-day management of their budget, so that they can see unspent lines, but they have needs elsewhere, that those transfers will take place a lot earlier on. I think we're seeing that now, but I'd like to continue seeing that so that we have that ongoing.
Okay. Another issue you raised in your presentation, I believe, was incentivizing departments to seek grant monies and other sources of revenue. Are we impacting that at all with this change?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that will still be a factor, and that will be incentive unto itself to be able to hire additional staff or do additional projects. I think that if funding for a grant purpose is unspent toward the end of the year, those funds, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, can be encumbered for use in the earlier part of the coming year, so that they don't just get swept away. So I think that we have that flexibility built in.
So you'll encumber funds in contingent fund for 23 if you see.
A department can encumber those funds for their own use for the beginning of the following year if they're designated and needed in a certain area.
That sounds a lot like rollover. Or no? How's it different?
Well, I think that it's if for instance, monies are committed and toward a project but not fully spent, and in the first few months of the coming year, they will be. I think that that can,
That's allowed, and
Yes.
that fits with GAAP. That complies with GAAP.
yeah, I believe so.
Okay, Annie.
Thanks for letting me ask another question. I was just thinking about the vehicles and the computer equipment. And I don't know if it's exactly the same, but I know for our highway department and other highway departments in the county, the smaller municipal ones, they wind up actually either not spending more or sometimes saving money by turning in their equipment more frequently. And so I'm hoping it'll be similar with this equipment, more frequently purchasing it, and you have less maintenance, and you have, for our employees, we have more modern equipment that they're using, which is of course much better. So I'm hoping we'll see some of those same benefits. So I guess it wasn't a question.
Yeah, I think that will, to the extent that it's a green vehicle, it'll go through that green vehicle program that we have, green fleet program. Okay, anything else? Rich?
Sorry to get past here, but on page 20, I had some questions about definitions that are separate from the rollover issue. You're
Okay.
using the term, this sentence I just struggled with. There shall be two separate and distinct contingent funds. The mandates fund to be appropriated for unbudgeted expenses for related budgeting units, and the contingent fund for other budgeting units. Could you explain the difference between the mandated budgeting units and the non-mandated?
Well, yeah, and off the top of
It's
my
quite a sentence.
Yes, it is. So this is part of the policy that we didn't look at updating, but
Is this something we could look at further and update? This isn't critical to getting this.
absolutely, yes.
I would like us to take a longer look, Deborah, at this fiscal policy. Just, I think to some extent, just for clarity, that perhaps we could clean up some of the writing, like, and defining mandated budgeting units and non-mandated, and it's the same thing for designated and non-designated. There appear to be some duplications in some of the language, and I didn't know if it had to be duplicated or not. But
Absolutely.
okay,
We could
But
probably spend a lifetime looking at this particular policy, but I don't know, it's probably been a while since it's been reviewed. On the other hand, I don't want to overstep our bounds and interfere with the crown jewel committee of the legislature, which is government operations.
yeah, I think this one sits with us though, and
Okay.
looking at fiscal policy is a life well spent, I think.
You think?
I'm sure everybody on the committee agrees.
Well, I think if we took an anonymous vote, you might be please surprised.
Might be on my own fly, but yes. No, but I think this bears some further look, because I read a lot of stuff I couldn't understand, and that made me nervous. I just feel like we should know what this means.
I think that's a fair point, Rich. Mike?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I can remember when we used to closely define the different kinds of mandated departments and funds and things like that. And we always talked about at the beginning of the expanded budget committees and things like that. We haven't really been into that for a long time. I don't think it's been quite as relevant as it has in the past.
Yeah.
But I think it's fine to look at it.
I have no problem with that.
Rick and I agreed as well, and we would like to take more time. We just realized that we didn't want to hold up the rest of we wanted to get the rollover piece settled first. But to both of your points, when we were, for the past couple of years, we've also been talking about revising this policy and making it congruent with GFOA standards in terms of designating funds and so forth. And so that's something that we'd like to update this with an eye toward the GFOA guidelines as well.
I think that's a worthy goal, Lisa. And in our slow months here on BCP, just plan on doing that.
Will do.
Okay. We ready to vote, people? All right. Mike,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. And I want to thank Lisa and Rick and whoever else worked on this, because this is a goal that we've had for the last couple of years, and it's nice to see we have finally achieved it. So the only other thing we've got on our agenda is the information items on budget adjustments and transfers. I commend those to your attention. They're in your packet. Lisa, do you think we should have a very short executive session to discuss a matter relating to contract negotiations?
I don't think that one's needed at this point.
Okay, all right. If anybody has any questions about that, just contact me, and I will fill you in. Not that there's been huge progress, but yeah, there's been slight changes in the situation. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Rich. Oh, come on, somebody. Yeah, Greg will second that. All in favor, say aye. Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you, everyone on staff. We got a lot of stuff done.